Good morning.
Good morning and happy Sabbath.
We're glad you joined us.
Indeed. Welcome once again to the lesson study. This is lesson 8, Planning for Success. Just looking at that title makes one think that that's something that has to be done. And indeed it is. You know the old adage, no one plans to fail, they just fail to plan. As we look at several texts, the memory text for this week is...
After we have prayer.
Oh, that's a good perk. After we have prayer.
Father, we thank you for today. We thank you that you have given us a plan, a way to go, a way to follow, a way to guide our lives, not just for our decisions that we make, but those that we live from day to day in our work and in how we manage our success. We ask you to send your Spirit to be with us as we study this lesson, for we pray in your name. Amen.
And now for the memory text.
Yeah.
Found in Colossians chapter 3, verses 23 and 24. Good old NKJV.
Yes. And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive reward for the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ. It's weird to say it backwards that way.
Well, you know,
Christ the Lord.
it's
But
good old
anyway,
NKJV.
I know.
That's why one reason I don't like that version. But in any case,
we didn't memorize it.
you know,
That's the problem.
like it says, most people do want a successful, happy life, but what does that success mean and what does happiness mean? Happiness is very transitory because it's an emotion. It's not a state like joy. And I don't mean a state as in a locality, but in an overall atmosphere of
Being.
existence, yes. Anyway, again, it depends upon how we define success, the authors point out. You know, it is greatly different for every individual.
Well, and at different points in our lives, we very often think about, well, this is success, and then as we get a little older, we think, not so much. That's not quite where the most important part is. And then we get a little older and we think, not really that either.
And then we get a little older and think, success, I am alive today.
I got up.
I'm
got
awake.
ready. I am okay. So when we look at this lesson, we're going to look at not just money and finances, but this week it looks at having purpose in life.
And avoiding some pitfalls that can lead to financial problems, but not necessarily only financial issues.
Yeah.
And of course, Sunday's lesson jumps right to the heart of the matter with first things first.
And so, first things first, looking at Ecclesiastes 12:1, speaking of first. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw nigh, when you will say, I have no pleasure in them. I don't know if that's you get old and you get tired and you go...
As you get old, you get cranky.
I don't know what it means. But in the days of our youth, remember your Creator.
Well, and what's the youth? Is it childhood? Is it teen? Is it 20s? Is it 30s? You know, they say the 60s is the new 40s. So, I mean,
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to say it's when you get to start making your own decisions.
Oh, like 10 or 12?
No, like you're not dependent on someone else for the decisions you have. As you mature into adulthood, my girls often say, I don't like adulting. It's a lot of work. And I say, well,
Welcome to the real world.
That's what God created us to do, was to grow up. And part of it is learning to find purpose and learning to enjoy each day and what it brings for us. The memory, part of the verses in this is Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you.
It goes back then to Genesis and starts in with the story of Abraham, where he knew God by voice. When God said, pack your things up from the Ur of Chaldees and head out, and just by the way, I'll let you know where we're going once we get going. He must have known there was a relationship there. So building that strong spiritual relationship, having God first in your life, like Matthew 14 says, Matthew 6 rather, kingdom of God first.
Yeah.
And, what's the important things? As Abraham progressed, of course, then his son Isaac, and then Abraham's grandson, Jacob and Esau, and all that stuff went on and so forth. And then even finding the right spouse. God, the second part, so to speak, of Sunday's lesson says that God directed Jacob to Rachel. So,
And even though he ended up with Leah first,
and probably other wives as well that have 12 sons, and that's just sons. Who knows about daughters? There wasn't just those two. Those two are mentioned as having. Actually, I don't think it. In the general story, it doesn't tell us how many sons Leah had, but it does tell
we
us
know that
how many Rebecca had, just Joseph and Benjamin.
Rebecca gave her maid to Jacob. This seems to be an issue in this family.
Well, one could
she's
only
like,
so many children,
here's my maid. Well, she wasn't having children. And so
sounds
Bilhah,
like Sarah.
Yeah, gave 2 sons. And Zilpah gave 2 sons. And Leah's last 2 sons. And then Rachel will have 2 children. When we look at that idea, recognizing that God has asked us to show him honor, and knowing, being, how can I say, recognizing the value of a spouse that is a partner. I remember when I first came to California, I'd go home on holidays and my dad would say, "So is there anybody who can keep up with you yet?" And I said, "No." And he goes,
"Run her all the time."
Yeah, and that was the big joke in my family. When I can find a man who can keep up, then that's the one I'm looking for. And, it was a joke, but actually recognizing that there's someone who has, the same work ethic, the same.
We're chuckling here. Should I tell the?
Go ahead.
When we were doing the premarital counseling, of course, you do inventories and surveys to start with and whatnot. And our second session, the counselor, who had known Tracy for a good number of years, and I came to know him as well, said, "If I didn't know the two of you well, I'd say don't get married, you'll kill each other. You're both so high in certain qualities and certain temperaments." But of course, that builds strength. We discovered early on that while we work great on items, we don't work great together. We each can do a part and put the parts together, but if we have to work together,
we're good partners, meaning we all part and we do our thing. But that is an important thing to learn, and those are the kind of things when you realize that in your life partner, you want someone who is a partner, not
not a participant.
Well, not just a participant, but someone that, they don't resent you because you're always telling them what to do, or you don't resent them because they're not doing what they need to do. To have that life partner. A lot of people don't think about that aspect.
And then, of course,
it's important.
When there are those kinds of things, and Tracy goes, I've been thinking, I switch into the, run fast, run far, because that means work for me.
Well, and let's be honest, at different times, when you're in a partnership, one will have a program or one will have a job to do, and then the other one is the helpmate. And over, we have found that in our lives where we will need someone to be our support, to be our cheerleader, to be our
builder.
Yeah. holding up the arms as we are.
As Joshua and,
Yeah.
and Aaron did for Moses in the
That's
Midian
right.
battle.
So when you look at that idea, it is an important aspect to think about. So I want to go to Corinthians.
2 Corinthians.
Yeah, and look at this.
Second Corinthians 6, verses 14 and 15.
Yeah. 6, 14, and 15. Do not be mismatched with unbelievers. So that's that's a huge aspect. For what partnerships have righteousness and iniquity? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? Or what has a believer in common with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God. And God said, I will live among them and move among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people.
She read 16 also. Very important, though, to add in there.
It is.
But that's so true. I think of couples I have known who, while they weren't married, they were talking about that point, and one of the partners wanted children and the other one didn't. Needless to say, after a bit of discussion, they went their separate ways because it was so important to both of them. They knew that they could not have a successful union. And I don't know if they both found new partners. One of them did, who was my friend in the earlier situation. And it seems to have been successful. The new partnership, the new way in which that they built their family. So that is critical. And that while that's not talking specifically about this is more in spiritual matters, which is probably even more important than like familiar items and so forth. But those things often are not thought about. Oh, I'm in love. Let's get married.
Well, and it's that, but it's also, I looked at the idea of spirituality here, but, our families are a big part of our world. And very often we don't consider, how much family pressure goes in to a relationship.
Oh, yes.
And, well, I was raised this way. Well, I was raised this way. And recognizing how key that is to the success of the individual as well as the couple. And, as you look at what you do, my dad came home almost at the same time every night growing up. And then they were doing some, I don't know, I guess you could say inventing, coming up and testing the new fuel tanks on the trucks that he worked on, big 18-wheelers for Freightliner. And he did the inspections and the math. And, if we put it at this angle, what will it do? And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, and I remember he would come home at 7 on those nights. And it was over a period of about 6 months. And I remember that being a burden on us because we lived on a farm. And that meant we and, my mom had to make sure that the cows were milked and the chickens were fed and a lot of other big chores that were taken care of. And I, that's an important aspect. Can the family, do the give and take to have it be successful? And that's very much a part of the first things first. If you're going to be an adult and you're going to be married in a relationship, you definitely want it to be a partnership. There's a lot to be said for that. And time and thought put into it. Or just be older like we were. That helps too.
To some degree, because
Yeah.
you know what you want and where you're headed.
Yeah.
Well, Monday's lesson brings us to the blessing of work, ideally. I'll just start off by saying work is a 4-letter word.
Mm-hmm.
Just leave it at that.
Okay, so I'm going to go on then. And you can
See,
look...
I like to fall in that first category. It
Yeah.
never happened in this world, being independently wealthy and not needing to work.
But work is very good for us. And, many people look at work as a job, an occupation. For me, I have found tremendous purpose in what I do, and it's meaningful. And
Well,
you know,
I do too,
storms
but
or
there's so much
happiness.
junk I have to throw in there too. It's not
Well,
it's just not the true education. There's so much junk we have to do for one organization or another that it has lost the ideal. But of course, we don't live in an ideal world, so there never was an ideal to begin with, except a fantasy ideal.
Yes.
Um,
but all it takes is a small child to look at him and go, Mr. Harder. And then there he is being sucked right back into where his passion is.
It doesn't
which is
necessarily need to be a
education
small
of children.
child, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. So if we look at that and we look at the idea of work, to find something that gives you purpose, that gives you a passion for life, that honestly you love to do, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek because I don't want to not get paid, but it's the kind of thing that you would do no matter what. I love
well,
to
you
teach.
might do it in a different manner.
Yeah, I love to
You know,
teach.
and like we're doing right now, we're not getting paid for teaching the lesson.
Oh,
Of course, we're not really
Penny,
teaching as much
laying
as
up treasure in heaven.
presenting the lesson, because
Yeah.
we don't have the give and take of a teaching situation, which is so critical. You know,
Yeah, we miss you.
We were created to dialogue.
Yeah.
We were created. Jesus as God the Son, not as Jesus. He wasn't Jesus, so he was born of Mary. Came to Adam and Eve in the cool of the evening to talk with them, to teach them. They were newly created. They were like newborn babes mentally to some degree, and
Well,
in
for
their knowledge
experience,
base,
yes.
and their experience. But yet at the same time, Adam could successfully name all the animals as they walked by him. So it's kind of like, wait a minute, there had to be some obviously innate data put in the bank, so to speak. But you know, God realized that as He created our bodies, He created them to do. We are beings to do, to think and to do.
Move.
To create in our own way, whether it be artistically, or shall I say, according to the commandment of God, take care of the garden, be fruitful and multiply. You know, we were meant to do. And what did Adam take care of the garden? There was labor involved with that. Not the same as after the fall, as before the fall, but there still was work to be done to dress the garden, to be stewards of this planet. So we were created to do work. And we know that from our physiology. If you don't work, we actually get weaker. We lose muscle mass. We lose brain acuity.
And there is a part of our brain that God made for us to find satisfaction in a job done. I'm a list person. I love to make lists. And so when I'm done with it, I check it off. And if it's not on my list, I write it on the list and then check it off.
She
and
finished
therefore,
it, so
I can
finish
feel
things
even,
on the list. Woo-hoo!
I can even feel more fulfilled. But God knew that there would be a measure of satisfaction and completion in us if we would work. And so that really is, if we look at the end of that first page of Monday, you know, what is there about work that, you know, is ideal? And it really truly has to do with providing satisfaction for us with a job well done.
The question is, what is about work ideally? Because there is no ideal work. Work's work. I don't care what you, like I said, it's a 4-letter word. Of course, so is lots of other things that are good. So, you know.
So, as we go on to Tuesday,
Alrighty, let's go on to
looking
Tuesday.
at the earning years, not the learning years, earning years. You
Well,
can
for
tell
some
what I've
years
been
it's the
doing.
learning years.
Yes, the earning years. As I looked at these, this section, you know, this is the, you know, they have pins for educators. I don't know that I've ever
I've gotten
been
one.
in a particular place when they gave out the
I've
pins
gotten
at the particular?
one. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Anyway, my dad,
So
when
JP, if
he
you're
had,
watching this,
when my dad, when he
worked for Freightliner.
worked for Freightliner,
Long time.
and I think it was 40 years, and he got a gold watch and some different things that were signifying.
Significant from
Yeah.
the Freightliner organization, of course.
Yeah,
But
and it was a big deal. And I remember his comment being a little bit of tongue in cheek that, wow, look at what I did. It's kind of like that. My grandparents went to, or my parents went to Europe, and all I got back was a T-shirt. It's it's like you got the trip, and I got the T-shirt. And my dad kind of, in a way, felt that way, that it was kind of anticlimactic. But in a way, it was a way of marking time. So if we look at that, the earning years are the tough years because you're often, engaged in a marriage of some kind, or you are working full time and maybe serving in church positions or whatever. You are involved with children, whether they're your children or other people's children, and getting closer to the end, their grandchildren. So when you look at that idea of those years, some people see them as chaotic. Some people, see them very pragmatically as they just passed. That was 20 years. That was 25 years. That was, and they just pass them by. Other people are like, got that one done. But all of them, when we look at them, what biblical principles can we look at? So first off is 1 Timothy 5,
verse 8, while she's getting there, we'll be looking at some other ones too. Are you going to touch on Psalms later?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But, okay. 5:8. I had to turn the page.
1 Timothy 5:8.
If anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially his own family, he has disowned the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Well, those are pretty hard words, but yet, culturally speaking, family was all important in Hebrew culture. I mean, probably still is in Hebrew culture today. And that's something that I didn't realize about the parable of the prodigal son. When the son said, I want my inheritance now, culturally he was saying, you're dead, Dad. I'm out of here. Sell the land. I want my part. You didn't sell land that owned by the family in that time. So it was a big cultural shock for them to hear. How could this person do this? And then the father looks for him and runs to greet him and restores him? Oh my goodness. And it painted a totally different picture of God for his hearers than the ones they had been led to believe. So,
Looking at Proverbs then.
providing for your family is so important in the culture then as well now.
I was going to say, how many years
Sounds
did we
familiar.
have Grandma? Maybe
Over 20.
about 20 years that she lived mostly with us. Occasionally she'd go back to the rest of the family in Oregon, but she spent a lot of time with us. And, it was kind of a joke, she chose us.
And she chose you. I happened to just come along.
But, then my girls go, Mom, don't choose us.
And I keep saying, you better have good jobs that make you wealthy so we could retire in luxury. And they just both look at me like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
You're on your own.
Yeah. So anyway, but we, looking at Proverbs 14:23, in all toil there is profit, but mere talk tends only to want.
That's it?
Yeah. So I was looking, it's talking about the rich and the poor. And it talks about the poor and how they despise their neighbor, blah, blah, blah. It goes on. But those who devise good meet loyalty and faithfulness. In toil, there's profit, but mere talk tends only to want. So basically, if you're not working and you're only complaining, sit down, shut up, and leave us alone because we're doing the work.
There were a few years I wasn't working full time in education, and one of our office slogans was, if you're going to complain, you better have solutions to fix that complaint too.
Yeah.
That wasn't quite how they said it, but that was the gist of the saying. If you're going to complain, great, but have solutions. Don't just come and whine at us. That was kind of the management basic framework of any office issue. And that's, maybe that's what that's hitting at,
Yeah, get in and work, because then you're part of the solution, not part of the problem. And then, of course, Colossians, if we get to Colossians 3, 23, I'm going to have to turn the page again. Whatever your task, work heartily as serving the Lord and not men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive your inheritance, your reward. That's our memory verse.
The memory text.
And if we look at that, I want to put the last little sentence, 25 on there, because to me it's like the one, and there you go. For the wrongdoer will be paid back for the wrong he has done. There is no partiality. You work hard, that's your reward. You complain and you don't work hard, you'll get your reward. We're not going to be partial about it. That's what it is.
And your reward might not be a pleasant one in that case.
Indeed.
It's like consequences. They're both good and bad depending upon what you put into
what end
it.
you're on. That's right.
That's true.
Yeah.
And the earning years, the lesson points out that there are 3 big parts of that. And of course, is to provide a Christian home environment for a family, and to teach the children a willingness to work and an appreciation for it. That is critical, especially today. Looking back, when I first started teaching, I guess I'll use the word shocked, that when Glendale Academy had its first work bee, which was all on campus, I was teaching 6th grade at the time, and I had workers who didn't know how to use tools. I had boys who were assigned to me who didn't know how to use a shovel or a pickaxe to break up the ground. And I was just shocked. I can remember jumping up on shovels and turning soil when I was a little kid. Little, like 4, 5, and 6. And here they were, 11 and 12, and had no clue how to use a shovel or a pickaxe.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what?
Well, growing up on a farm, we all had to work. My younger sister used to say, Dad thinks he's Santa Claus all summer long. All he wants us to do is ho, ho, ho. And
they had a row or two. They had to do that up the vegetable garden, right, dear?
We had over a half-acre garden, but we grew everything that we ate all winter long. And so it was certainly a big job. And, of course, we shared. And, of course, that was part of it, too. But we always had things to do. My mom, would put jobs on the refrigerator on a 3x5 card. And it always had an amount of money. And, depending on the day, depending on the job, it could be like worthwhile money, but like, I don't want to do that job. But we did learn to work. We did learn to do things that we weren't used to. As a teacher and as a mom, the different places that we worked, I would see parents carrying their children's backpacks, picking up after them, don't forget your coat. They're going through and doing all kinds of things. And, one mother goes, well, do you have all your stuff? And I said, the girls have it. And they're like, looking at me like, what's wrong with you?
Well, and the fact, my comment always is, God gave them arms and legs to do work.
Well,
all our girls used to want us to carry them. When we went places like, no, God gave you legs, you're going to use them. And they're like, yeah, but Daddy.
Yeah, tired or whatever. But also the value is that it gives them a sense of accomplishment. So as young as they were, before they started school, they learned to start cooking basic things. So I taught them how to make breakfast. And, they could put their bagels in the toaster and knew how to butter them, and they knew how to do toaster waffles and things in the microwave, and could pour their drinks and do all kinds of
When
things.
Alyssa was in first grade, she was making me lunches, and the first one she made for me, I got 3 grapes and 2 carrots, besides my sandwich that Tracy had made. And I'm like, honey, are we out of carrots and grapes? She goes, no, Alyssa made it. She put in the same amount for her as for you. I'm like, I could do a bit more. So we had a discussion about size and quantities. But it was so cute to watch it because she could literally go plop into the lunchbox. It was just so adorable because she can barely see above the counter, right?
But she was doing her job.
Pluck, the 3 grapes and the 2 grapes and 3 carrots, or what? 3 grapes and 2 carrots, I think it was. And they weren't carrots. They were, the carrots, the baby little carrots that are misshapen, shaved ones. Actually, those are manufactured carrots, by the way. But that's beside the point too. So that ability and appreciation to work, and appreciation of a job well done, is so important.
Yeah.
And then the third point, of course, to help with a good education. We know from all the research, not just education, but societal research, that education is the social silver bullet. The more education one has, the healthier they will be, the less likely they'll, let's say in the positive way, they're more apt to contribute in a positive manner to the community in which they live, as opposed to tear it apart or destroy it by their actions. They're more likely to also continue with education within the family and promoting that. And that, of course, raises the overall quality of life.
And if you're putting in for a Christian education, it is not inexpensive. And I always tell parents when they ask, man, it's just so expensive. And I said, you can spend the money on this end, or you can continue to spend the money later into their life.
Perhaps.
And I said, one of the things that I look at is the value of Christian education for me is that I am, this sounds terrible, but paying people who share the same values I do to care for my child, to mentor my child, to nurture my child. And that to me was worth every penny spent. Did it mean that we didn't always get to go on vacation? Yeah, that's what it meant. Did it mean that we didn't have a lot of extra stuff? Yeah, that's what it meant. But my children had a positive Christian education that has put them in good stead. My youngest cousin married a man who was an Adventist, and
Was or was not?
was not. And her children, we have encouraged them to come to camp meeting with us and to go to summer camp. And I found out that her kids have taken that very seriously and are going to Christian schools in college. Not in high school, but in college. That's what they chose to look for. I want to go to a place where, there will be people who will be guiding my decisions and praying with me and encouraging me. And I think about that, and wow, what a huge impact that is for what's going on with kids today. And how much more could we hope for our children?
Oh, there was something I was going to say during that, but I totally lost the thought. I didn't jot it down. So, when you don't write it down, it didn't happen. So let's move on to Wednesday's lesson, working with integrity. This goes back to the part of the memory verse, whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your strength. As to the Lord, no matter what the job is, I think of a radio commentator, presenter I listened to, who was talking about that very verse as he went through the gospel. And he said he always thinks of the named a woman's names whose job was basically to stamp out bolts from sheet metal. That's all she did all day long. And he said to whatever her name was, Mary, Susie, whatever it was, don't you just get horribly bored from the monotony? And she says, no, because I say, there's one more bolt for the Lord, one more bolt for the Lord. And she doesn't do it in a supercilious manner by any means, but truly serious. She's doing her work to the level of if she was doing it to the Lord. I ask my students that, 9 and 10-year-old children, is this work that you would present to Jesus? And they look at it and go, no. And I said, you probably should do it again. I tell them how it looks often is half your grade. They're like, what? I said, if it looks good, it's going to be deemed more favorable. So make your work look like the grade you want to get here in school. What kind of grade would you give that? Mm-hmm. And they're brutally honest with themselves. They'll look at it, if it's sloppy, they'll go, maybe a D. And I said, yeah, exactly. Maybe not a D, maybe a one-legged A. They're like, a one-legged A? I said, yes, take a leg off an A, what do you get? Oh. They get the point real fast. And it's amazing, too, when you help them to understand that that's part of what our jobs here in life is all about. And people can see a difference. People have come to know God because of some workman who did his or her job as for the Lord. And it was different from the other workmen that they had, other laborers or professionals that had to come work for them, because it was done to a higher level of excellence, because they were doing it as unto the Lord.
Well, and recognizing that as we are looking at the quality of our work and how we have, what standard we hold ourselves to, helping our children learn those standards is very important. You know, I tell the kids, there's some things that almost is okay. But in general, unless you're throwing a hand grenade,
or playing tiddlywinks or horseshoes,
you want to have it to be correct.
Those are the three that I give my kids. Yeah. Almost as good enough in hand grenades, tiddlywinks, and horseshoes. And if they know what none of them are, what a hand grenade is, and they have no idea how it works, so this makes no sense to them, you got to explain it, and then they get it, and it's like, oh, yeah, okay.
But often, when we look at what a Christian's job is, how we complete our work, how we work efficiently.
Our deportment on the job or elsewhere
that too. But how we do we work at a steady pace, or are we super slow and then we go visit and then we go do this or I was talking to some students about my seniors about economics and how right now a lot of employers are really struggling because they have the kids who are working on computers, and the kids have their email, their Instagram, or and they're watching old reruns of I Love Lucy, and then they have their work on the other side of their screen. And well, I'm doing my work, but if I'm only using, I tell the kids, half their wits, nobody wants a half-wit working for them. And they want somebody who will work zealously for the time that they are being paid. I don't want to pay an employee for doing a slow, sloppy job just because, they think that it doesn't matter. I said it does matter, and that's very important.
Well, and we see that the lesson brings a story of Joseph. Whatever Joseph did after he was sold, his first 17 years, he was, I think, just a spoiled brat. But after that, when he came to grips with reality, both in Potiphar's house and in the prison, and then, of course, with Pharaoh, because he did a high level of work as unto the Lord, Potiphar's house was blessed, the prison was blessed, and of course he saved the known world from the 7 years of famine in Egypt. And not just Egypt, but the entire Fertile Crescent wasn't fertile for those 7 years. And Egypt had the food source that people came from all around to get during that time.
So if we look at that Genesis 39, Oh, I went to 29. I need to get back to
It's
39.
30, isn't it? Not 39?
39, 2
oh,
to 5.
the big bold. Yes, yes.
Yeah. 39, 2 to 5.
We're on this page 68 of the regular quarterly if you're following with us. If you happen to have a teacher's quarterly, which I would encourage you to get, either online or buy, we're looking at page 102.
All right, so 39, 2 to 5. And when we look at that, whoops, I should have stayed back on that page.
She didn't mark the text earlier.
I know. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man. He was in the house of his master, the Egyptian, and caused all that he did to prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all
This is
he
in
had.
Potiphar's house.
Yeah. From the time that he made him overseer in his house over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was upon all he had in the house and in the field. So not only can a Christian be blessed in his work that he is presenting to his boss, so to speak, but the boss's household can be blessed by what the Christian can bring to the job. And that's very much a part of what 1 Corinthians, 10:31, whatsoever you do.
I love, therefore do ye also. I love the regular King James. I read Uncle Arthur's The Schopenhauer stories to my students for worship. They have no clue of these stories, and even the history behind them, let alone most of the events that they're written about, because it's just post-World War II. So far out of these children's reality today. So when it does, the King James, thus saith the Lord, I tell them we ought to say at the end of everything, we talketh abouteth todayeth, and they think that's so funny. But there's, like, let's get thee up hither, or come thou thither, words that were used back when King James had the Bible translated in 1611, 1511, sometime way back. Do you remember what it was? 16, 17?
For what?
King James Version.
1604.
1604. It was the thee, thous, this, these, those, and so forth. So, therefore, whatever thou doest or drinketh, doeth unto the Lord. Now, I am very careful about not making fun of the Lord's name, of course. So we don't say Lordeth or anything unless he's lordething it over you, but that's a different whole name. But, whatsoever ye eat or drink even, do so to the Lord. So that would, preclude gluttony. That would preclude eating too much of even a good food, let alone food that isn't good for us. If we're doing it truly to God's glory, that would make us to be more temperate. Not just in work, but in all that we do, and I would say that all that we be. That's quite challenging for that kind of balance, to truly think about it and make it your way, because let's face it, we all have things we like to overindulge in.
Yeah.
Whether it be sports or exercise or whatever it might be. And it is because we are truly moving to work with integrity.
Yeah. Thursday, seeking godly
So
counsel.
maybe that would take care of the imbalance. So you have the integrity, and seeking God's counsel brings us into that balance.
Well, recognizing that, there's always, different people who have different ideas of be careful of this, invest here, do this, a financial planner, that kind of thing. There are many out there, and many have ideas and can really help you understand, the path through. Because, oh my, just the paperwork anymore for doing taxes, for taking care of financial business transactions. There's a lot of stuff. And for those of you who have retired, you know that just walking into a Social Security office is a job. And there's a lot of things that go with recognizing money management and having a good, strong Christian advisor is very important. Not choosing based on, oh, well, they make people rich, but here are people who have principles behind, godly principles behind what they are suggesting that you do. And it goes back to Psalms 1, where, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord. He meditates day and night. It's like a tree planted by the water. But if we go on and we look at Proverbs, getting to Proverbs 3:5 is one of my favorite Bible texts. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. But it goes on. That's what I memorized when I was in kindergarten. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. So, how do we apply the principles? What is a godly way to go about it?
And interestingly enough, the lesson points out 7 principles. There's something about that number 7, right? Of course, the first is organization, have a plan. And it's a plan not just for financial management, but for saving, for spending, for earning. What is it that you want it to be a successful plan? And then, of course, the key, spend less than you earn. Don't use credit. That's what they're saying, because, credit really, as I have pointed out before, which I never thought about, is spending money on what you think you're going to earn.
Yeah.
Well, that can be disastrous.
It's more about learning to be content. We tend to be in a world that says, here, have some more, here, have some more, here, have some more.
I tell my kids more is always better.
Well,
when you're talking about education or schoolwork, more is always better. They're like, no, I say yes.
But more than that, I tell the kids, capitalism is based on
greed.
Well, greed, and the fact that we will find something new. And so, I talked to them about, hot water heaters used to be 20, 30 years. And then they realized they weren't having enough turnover. And so now your hot water heater is guaranteed for like 6 years or 7 years.
Well, you can buy different levels.
Yes.
5, 6, 10, 15. But they can make them to last forever, but then they're out of business. So they don't do that. It's like ladies' nylon stockings. Originally, they were like impermeable. Well, guess what? You sell a lady one set.
Yeah.
And she has it for years, as opposed to you wear them once and they're ruined. You got them caught on something. You got to go buy $10, $12 more, whatever it is, 20 anyway. And then of course, do some savings. Most financial planners say you need to have a 3-month supply of savings to meet life's potential emergencies. Well, who has that kind of saved money in America
some
today?
People do.
Not many.
Some do, it depends on what kind of saving that you need to do. And planning ahead. So let's say I want to go on a vacation. Instead of putting it on a credit card and paying it off, then I'm going to save that money and then go on my vacation.
I knew some individuals who'd put all their loose change in a jar. And when that loose change earned enough for them to do the trip they wanted to go, that's when they took their trip. And it was amazing. The amazing trips they took in such a short period of time. It's like, where are you getting all that change? What are you buying to get all that change?
They didn't just put their pennies in.
Maybe they just went and took their money and got change for it and then put all that money. Oh, I'm sure that wasn't the case. But
so Proverbs 6, I want to read Proverbs 6.
All right, Proverbs 6, verses 6 to 8.
Yes, I'm getting there.
She's getting there.
6 to 8. Oh, it's back one page. All right. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. I love this.
See, there's that thou sluggard.
Oh, sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her food in the summer, gathers her sustenance in the harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard, when you will arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a vagabond, and want like an armed man.
Well, I will say, first of all, the ant works herself to death, so that's probably not a good thing to do. But The point, of course, is they're busy.
Yes,
And
every day
And they are,
preparing.
yes, and they are societal. They work together, and they have a cause in which they work for. So be a diligent worker.
Save for the times that you need, just
And
like
of course,
the ant
have
does.
financial faithfulness to God. Tithe first, of course. Then there's your offerings. And the last point is probably one that is kind of very hard to balance, at least in my mind. Point 7 is remember that this earth is not our real home. So our management is management of the resources God gives us for here and now, but yet we need to lay away to further His work as well.
Well, and it's building up the
Not
treasure
lay,
in
not lay
heaven.
away, but have that a portion of our financial resources and our resources of time to give back to God.
Yeah. And recognizing that over time, we are laying up treasure. Not here, just for here, but for future times. So on Friday, I want to just go to one thought that's in here
And
that
if
I
you're
think is
not
significant.
following, Friday's quotes all come from the Book of Education from that Mrs. White wrote back in the early 1900s to fund education. That's why the book was written,
Yeah.
to help our schools.
So this one is from 267. We need to follow more closely God's plan of life, to do our best in the work that lies nearest, to commit our ways to God, and to watch for indications of His providence. These are the rules that ensure safe guidance in the choice of an occupation. And I like that, do what lies nearest. Don't, it doesn't have to be grand and glorious far away. We just commit our ways and then watch for indications. I think that's sometimes where we struggle when we work. We're not paying attention to the messages that God is sending. And He wants to be an active part of our work as well as a part of our spiritual life. He wants to be able to honor us and others through the work that He's called us to do.
So the promise in Proverbs 3, lean not unto your own understanding, in all ways acknowledge Him, and He will guide your path. Shall, will, they're interchangeable. But in any case, yes, they are. I'll talk to you about that after we're done recording. Let's finish with prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the insights given through the authors of our lesson. And I pray that you would continue to enlighten our minds and show us your path, that we may walk in it, that you, as you have promised, you will guide our paths if we acknowledge you in all ways. So Lord, if we're seeking to do your will, you will show us that path. May we have the Spirit's discernment to know what that may be in every aspect of our lives. May we share this with those to whom we come in contact in some small way, maybe by just the jobs that we do and how we do them. This week I pray that we may continue to serve you until you come, and may it be soon, Lord. These things I ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Happy Sabbath.